And now we have Maria on the line, Maria Andreoli. She's our psychologist. She's been running a series on neurodivergence, something that's got a real growing awareness in society today. Maria's been talking about differing forms of neurodivergence, and today we're going to focus on dyslexia. Maria, are you there?
Hey, Leanne.
How
yes,
are
I'm
you?
here.
So,
I'm going good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. So tell me, what is dyslexia? It's a word we hear bandied around in the context of when someone misspells a word or they reverse numerals in a phone number. Is that dyslexia, or is it more than that?
Well, people with dyslexia can make those mistakes. Put simply, dyslexia is just when the brain has trouble processing written language. So maybe challenges with reading, spelling, sounding out words. And yes, some people do report that they actually see the words get jumbled, but it doesn't always look like that.
So how does it typically play out, say, in a child's life? What might a parent notice or a teacher notice?
So in preschool or early primary, they might start to have difficulty with sound, learning letters and sounds. They might, like what you said before, mix up letter order, like confusing B and D, or was and saw. They might struggle to rhyme. And a big one that you'll see is they'll just hate reading. They'll just say it's too hard. And a lot of parents assume, that maybe they're misbehaving. But look, generally when a kid just really doesn't want to do something, there might actually be some genuine challenges there. It's as well, maybe in later primary, even if they've seen words repeatedly, they might still struggle to remember it. And some kids you'll find they're really good at telling stories verbally, but they're just not good at putting it on paper. So those are some of the early signs you'll see with dyslexia.
And what would you say to a parent who might be noticing some of these things in their child? What should they do?
Yeah, look, honestly, I would recommend assessment, really, because it's a lot of the research tells us that kind of early intervention makes a really big difference. The best kind of outcome you're going to get for a kid who has dyslexia across their life when it comes to their reading is finding it early and putting what needs to be put in place early on.
And what sorts of things might that be?
Yeah, so it'll be a balance of teaching them specific skills and also putting the right adjustments and changes in place to cater for the dyslexia. So it'll be a balance of those two things. So, if that kid is put in, a special program or linked with a tutor, or even if the parent's just very proactive in helping, teaching them their phonemic awareness, actually explicitly teaching those things that might come natural to other people, like word sounds, rhyming, blending sounds to make a word. But also, I think, especially in more severe cases of dyslexia, the school generally needs to put certain adjustments in place. So some kids with dyslexia have a scribe, for example, for exams, or they're allowed to use speech to text for assignments, and they generally helps to get lots of visuals and have information with words on it put in a specific way. So lots of spacing between sentences. So there's different things that you can do to help.
I imagine it must be pretty tough for kids. I have friends who are older and who suffer with dyslexia, and I know that it can really affect how a person feels about themselves.
Yeah.
Just tell us about that and what can be done to support young people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of these people, I have friends with dyslexia as well. I have lots of clients with dyslexia, and the same thing I hear over and over again in the older ones is I grew up feeling dumb. I just thought I was really stupid, or I was called lazy. for not being able to read, for not being able to do that. And like, think about it, like reading is just such an essential part of school. But the thing we know about dyslexia is that it actually has nothing to do with intelligence. And that's like another reason why early diagnosis is so important, just so that kid doesn't grow up feeling stupid. I have clients who they're young, they're kids, and then we find out they've got dyslexia, and like I'm able to take them now through that process of this is how your brain works. It's nothing to do with intelligence. It's just different.
That must be such a reassuring message.
Yeah, it is. And I like to share a story with them as well, of a radiologist, if I can share it real quickly on here, called Beryl Benacerraf. She's a radiologist, very renowned radiologist, had severe dyslexia growing up. Parents thought she was just lazy. She thought she was just dumb. But she was quite driven and motivated. She went on to study radiology, and something changed when she was in college, like as opposed to school, because the textbooks had so many graphs, and tables and visuals, like it just clicked with her. And she actually, she smashed it. She did absolutely incredible. She ended up becoming one of the most world famous radiologists.
Oh, wow.
Developed a genetic sonogram that kind of changed prenatal ultrasounds and helped us. It just changed the way that medicine is done, and the way that ultrasounds are done completely. And she actually said that, this is a quote by her, because of my dyslexia, my brain works differently. I can see patterns that others can't. And we actually know that about dyslexia is it's not just that they can't read. Their brain's processing differently. They're actually big picture thinkers. When they're looking at that book, they're not just seeing the individual lines. They're taking in the whole page at once. And it makes it hard to read, but when it comes to other skills, it can actually be a strength.
Wow. So, what would you say to a parent who's been recently diagnosed, had a child who's been recently diagnosed? What sorts of things can they do in the home that might be supportive of their child?
Like I said, that skills teaching, like teaching them phonemic awareness, like that really, like I said, that thing that may come naturally to some people, but that kid might need a lot more coaching. There's different programs that you can look up online. I don't have any names off the top of my head. If a parent wants to do something at home with the child, though, that helps with teaching word sounds, blending sounds to make a word, rhymes. That's the teaching side. But I would encourage lots of conversations surrounding that child's strengths, because what we do see a lot with any
really
learning
important.
difference, is that confidence goes down.
Maria, this Shell here. Just wanted to jump in. I have a son. My youngest son is severely dyslexic, and I took him to a specialist when he was probably around 9 or 10. And within the 1 week, it was a very expensive week for us.
It is.
We pulled him out of school, put him in for a week just with the specialist. But within that week, he jumped 7 levels in reading.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Amazing.
That's absolutely amazing.
And the main technique that she was using with him was clay, using sculpture for everything. And so he'd have to write out all of the letters with clay for each word.
That's so awesome.
And then create a picture to go with the word. And then all of the words that he was writing down, he would have this picture, because he would see things in picture. And so if he can look at the object that he created and the word together, then that word becomes part of the picture.
So it's this sensory experience as well, I guess.
It's a little bit of the sensory for sure, but just having the word and the picture together, that he had done, because he was putting it from his mind, how he pictured it. And so sure, at first she was putting down common words that you can make a picture for, cat, or just make a little clay cat, and there's the word CAT, but how do you make a picture for the word that? or how do you make a picture for the word the? So he had to come up with something that he could picture. And so he had to make little clay objects in his mind, and to have that association when he sees those letters together, that's that picture. And yeah, it really, really worked.
Wow, that's a beautiful
That is
story.
so awesome. That's absolutely amazing. And I also, on top of that, a lot of what we know about people with dyslexia is they usually have strengths in their visual spatial thinking. So you can see why combining those visual skills with language learning makes such a difference. But that's a really awesome story.
Now, when I was growing up, people often, it was the era when rose-coloured glasses really came to the fore. What's the thought on that these days? Does it help, or was it just one of those passing fads that didn't really amount to much?
Well, we don't tend to use them in my practice. They're not really something that we tend to recommend. We focus a lot more on the skills training.
Yeah.
I think the idea is it's meant to slightly change what you're seeing visually, but we just recommend line spacing, like the way that like documents are presented, just like spacing the lines. Look, there may be some people out there who still recommend those, and I don't want to, talk badly to that, because I'm sure there's reasons, but it's just not something that I have a lot of experience with, and we don't really tend to use either.
Yeah. So that is really, really interesting. I'd never really connected dyslexia with neurodivergence. So that's obviously something that's happened in recent years, and it's been a really helpful framework by what you're saying to actually understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like neurodivergence is pretty broad. It's just, any kind of brain difference. And part of that is, dyslexia, this idea that brains are wired not incorrectly, just differently. And they come with different strengths and weaknesses as well.
We have a comment here from David wondering if left-handed versus right-handed has anything to do with it, because he's left-handed and dyslexic, and he knows quite a few others that are similar. Is there any correlation? My son's right-handed and he's dyslexic, so I don't know.
Look, part of our screening, we don't focus on left hand or right hand for any type of neurodivergence. It's not something that I think has a strong kind of basis in the research. So with our assessments, we don't include that. Something we do look out for, though, is when a child is not gaining any predominant hand. So they're just switching between their right and their left hand. And that's when we begin to think, okay, like something's developing differently. Like the brain hasn't narrowed down to just using one hand. Again, it's not a huge thing that would say, yes, they have this diagnosis, but it is something that we look out for. But whether looking at like, are you right-handed or left-handed, we're not really too concerned with that.
Yeah, and Chanel has just texted in. She says, I have it. So glad dyslexia is better understood now. I don't know growing up how much dyslexia affects not only learning for school, but every aspect of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, reading is just such a big part, of everyday life.
Yeah,
I think the more we talk about it, the more, it's helping kids to build confidence and just prevent that sense of, inadequacy that can happen.
Yeah. My son is like 27. He still uses voice to text and all of that. He just avoids reading still as much as possible. But he's very successful in his field of work. And, it hasn't affected him at all. He's incredibly punny. I don't know if that's a normal thing, but he, from when he was a little baby, you could just say anything and he could just find something witty or punny to pull from it immediately.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, awesome stuff.
Yeah,
hey, go for it, Maria.
I was just like you said, he's quite punny, right? So like some of the strengths, like I said, those visual spatial skills. So we see a lot of engineers, artists, designers, inventors with dyslexia, generally stronger pattern recognition. So they're big picture thinkers, and not all the time, but they usually tend to be really good storytellers. There's a lot more creativity and, out of the box problem solving there, which, can kind of lend to explain why he might be good with puns, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.